All right, on the back of what we've heard and the general vetting, let's speak and try and do a little analysis of this vetting yesterday. Mr. Edem Senanu is an anti-graft campaigner. He joins us, as well as Mr. Yakubu Hadi, Fighter General, Economic Fighters League. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Great. Having followed what happened yesterday with the vetting, Mr. Senanu, I'll start with you. What do you make of generally the type of questions that were put to the nominee? Now we understand that the committee has unanimously approved him.
I think that the questions were appropriate. They were informed by the issues that had come up in the public space prior to this particular vetting. I think that they managed to pick on the key things and put them to him. They didn't treat him with kid gloves, so he had to deal with the various issues, and I think he did so equitably.
What will be your initial comments on that, Mr. Hadi?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think that I was a bit disappointed when he was going to talk about his strategy for fighting corruption, because he said he was going to make corruption a very costly endeavor. And he was about to say how he's going to do that, you know, as special prosecutor. He mentioned about, he said that he was going to use something he calls pressure for progress. And I was keen to understand exactly what pressure for progress means and how that was going to be used in fighting corruption. And just there and then he was cut short by another question. And I think that didn't really go down well with me. But yeah, so without knowing exactly how he's going to do what he says he's going to do, I don't know if the whole vetting process did achieve for us as Ghanaians what clearly the incoming special prosecutor is going to do, and how he's going to do that, so that we can hold him accountable when in office regarding what the sort of things that he has said.
Okay. Mr. Senanu, before the vetting, we had heard how some people had said they know very little in terms of his fight against corruption was. Did you get a sense that that was made clear? Did we get to appreciate some of the things that he had done by way of fighting corruption?
Not from the parts that I listened to. Apart from talking about teaching criminal law for 15 years or so, if I remember right, I didn't get a very strong sense of the anti-corruption bit. And yes, that was an important aspect of the questions we had asked prior to this nomination.
So let me just quote something that he had said in response to a question that was put to him. And this is a quote, reading from myjawline.com. And he says, "Honorable Chair, I'm not naive to assume that I am coming to stop corruption. There's no way I can stop corruption. God himself will not even acclaim to that. But I am going to make corruption very costly, very, very costly to engage in terms of conflict of interest. I would institute what I call pressure for progress. And in this quest, there's going to be a systematic review of all public agencies and the development of integrity plans. I intend to set up a public corruption perception index to rank public sector agencies against each other to know which institution is performing well and which institution is not doing well in terms of corruption. In that quest, if you are head of an institution and persistently your institution is drawing the short straw in terms of the perception of corruption from the point of view of experts, from the point of view of business people, you will sit up. So by way of, just this little bit of some of the plans that he intends instituting, what do you make of it, Mr. Sinanu, again?
Well, I think it's a good thing. You would call it a public sector league table based on a corruption perception index. And certainly, if you were the chief executive of an entity that's always at the bottom of this league table, you'll be doing everything to come up. And then it would obviously bring up some criteria. They will have to outline specific criteria which would form tangible areas that each of these entities would have to improve on as they went on. I think it's innovative, but it cannot be done by the Special Prosecutor's Office by itself. It would need a lot of collaboration and stakeholder input for it to work.
And Mr. Hadi, you had talked about a bit of this plan. You said you didn't get enough information going forward, but what do you make of just what he said, what I read by way of the perception, the corruption index that he plans instituted? Remember also that he says that he fully subscribes to the ANAS principle, and he says, I'm going to use it. I've already stated that I'll be engaging investigative journalists in respect to my work if given the nod. I say so because I have intimated that corruption is so secretive and complex, and unless the participants are coming to you to report themselves, it is almost impossible to find out. So he answers a bit of what you were expecting, doesn't he?
Well, corruption perception index. I don't know, but this is not something that is new. It is something that the Ghana Integrity Initiative and the CDD Ghana are already doing. I think every Afrobarometer report, the CDD brings out Ghanaians' perception about public institutions. And there are certain public institutions that have consistently ranked low, the police, the judiciary, the office of the president, parliament, and all these institutions have consistently ranked low in those corruption perception rankings, or if you like, surveys that CDD and Ghana Integrity Initiative have been doing. But there's clearly no change in any of them. people just continue. People read those things. I mean, media highlights, and then they do interviews, and then it's business as usual. So I don't know exactly how this is going to be done that is going to bring anything different. What Special Prosecutor has been appointed to do is to prosecute. He shouldn't come and be telling us about corruption perception index as if he's some head of a civil society organization, anti-corruption civil society organization. And it's clearly the reason why I don't see the relevance of the question of track record in fighting corruption. He's not an anti-corruption CSO. He is a prosecutor. The function of the office is to prosecute. And if he has enough legal experience, enough legal knowledge and skills to do the prosecutions and get people to pay back our money and get people to jail for spending our money illegally, then, I mean, that works. So this pressure to bring his record on fighting corruption doesn't cut it. But just in the same way, it doesn't really say much to me if he's talking about corruption perception index as special prosecutor for public. These things are already being done by Ghana Integrity Initiative and CDD Ghana. So what is this duplication? There's no need for that. What we need him to come and do is to come and prosecute people who are violating the public purse by stealing our money and chopping it nyafu nyafu. That is what we want Special Prosecutor to be doing. And it is clear that over the years, prosecutions of corrupt people who have stolen our monies, I mean, Sada is still hanging, Judah is still hanging. We have very many new corruption issues that have gone on in this government over the last 5 years or so, and prosecutions have been abysmal. There's clearly no consequence for stealing the public purse, stealing from the public purse. And that is what gives people the audacity to even steal the money more with impunity.
Okay.
And therefore, a special prosecutor, we expect him to prosecute people and get them to return our money and put them in jail. That is exactly what he's supposed to do. And if he's talking about making corruption costly and risky, I think that this is the only way that he, in his mandate, can make corruption risky and costly.
Okay, well, thanks. Except that before you prosecute, you've got to investigate. So that's also part of his mandate, to investigate.
Yes, I didn't say he shouldn't investigate, but I'm saying that to say you are publishing a corruption perception index, something that is already being done, and it's been done over several years, and the publishing of this has not changed the corruption in those institutions that are consistently ranked low.
Okay,
and you are coming to duplicate it.
Okay.
It means that it doesn't work, and you are coming to duplicate it. So exactly what is going to happen. So investigate, yes, but your mandate is to prosecute.
Okay.
And jail people and collect our money.
All right. Point well made. I want us to move on. Mr. Senano, I want to quote something else that he says. You know, he's 43, and he, talks about the fact that by the time he's done, serves his tenure, he would be 50. So he talks about what he would be leaving behind. He says, I want to leave a solidly established office with its administration methodically run. That's the gift I want to give myself on my 50th birthday. What do you make of this?
I think it is good that he's thought through what the personal targets in taking up this office are. And yes, an office that has systems in place and can run, as we say, we need strong institutions, and then we need strong leadership to perform in those institutions. So I think he sets out for himself something that all of us would be ascribing to. And I am hoping that once he gets there, he will add a few more, including an institution that works with other security agencies to get the results that we need. I'd like to point out to Hadi that, look, one of the key elements of the law that sets up the office requires that the person should have proven anti-corruption experience, and it's for good reason. It's a sector where if you've not come and been confronted with the hydra-headed, multifaceted way things happen, you can get intimidated. Even Mr. Amidu at a point then, copped out. And so it's not for nothing that these things have been highlighted. And also, I suspect that he's not just talking about a perception from the citizens saying that this institution, this is my view, but also the comparison within and between institutions. That's a nuance that adds another layer to the comparison. And so if we're using the methodology for the CPI, it will not be exactly the same if you're creating a league table and asking the opinions of respondents. So there's a nuance if you're going to do what he seems to be describing. He probably definitely needs the technical support to get it articulated and done right.
Ms. Adi, do you want to respond?
Well, clearly, I mean, the setup of the office in terms of his mandates is basically the issue of prosecuting corruption cases or issues that have to do with protection of the public purse. So for me, publication of corruption perception index is clearly a non-starter.
Well,
Really, because
maybe we have to hold it there and see exactly what he does with it, because as it were, he didn't go into details in terms of what strategy he wants to use. So maybe we should wait and see, watch what he does.
well, I mean, clearly, you see, when we have public of.
Okay, unfortunately, I think the network has gone by there. But Mr. Senano, I want us to talk about what Mr. Amidu couldn't do. I mean, he occupied the office for 3 years. He was quite visible by way of his writings and his pronouncement. First of all, would the expectation be, and I think one of the things that perhaps people also liked about Mr. Amidu was the fact that he could vocalize the shortfalls by way of what he wasn't getting, what the office wasn't getting. Do you have the confidence that we will see that same kind of strategy with this new special prosecutor, if confirmed?
Well, even if we didn't have the confidence, I think that it's something we need to point out to him right at the start. And even though Mr. Amidu would come to us and tell us what was not happening, I think he kind of waited too late in each instance before engaging with the public and stakeholders and letting us know that these are the difficulties in terms of logistics, in terms of human resource. We wouldn't want Mr. Kissi Agyebeng to do that. I think that right from the scratch, he should do a baseline report on the status of the office, its logistics, its human resource, the state of cases that were handled by the former prosecutor, where they stand today, whether preliminary investigation, whether in court, whether being finalized. All of that will give us a certain understanding of where he is taking off from. And he should be much more speedy in giving us reports in terms of, let's say, quarterly updating us that these issues have been addressed or not addressed. Because working together with citizens, men and women of conscience who want to speak up on these things, we'll be able to put pressure where it is required. That ensures that what it takes to deliver is provided to him. So I think that he just needs to learn to adopt a communicative style that brings on board other stakeholders to support the process of delivery.
Mr. Hadi, are you back with us?
Hello?
Okay, yes, Mr. Hadi,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Would you also want to suggest a few things if you had the question that I put to Mr. Senano?
Yes. See, when Martin Amidu was appointed, there was a lot of euphoria, and we issued a press release congratulating him and making certain suggestions. And we said that there was no way he was going to succeed in fighting corruption unless certain systemic issues were dealt with. And part of those systemic issues have to do with the way corruption is handled in terms of even if you look at the class nature of it. And by class nature, I'm talking about how people who steal, things like five fingers of cassava, or one goat, or one mobile phone, and get several years in prison. And somebody, by the stroke of a pen, is able to steal millions of Ghana cedis and uses court gymnastics to stay out of prison for years. And finally, the case goes dead. So part of the systemic issues, and probably some of these do not lie within the mandate of the SP alone, because there may be systemic issues that go beyond just his office. But these are critical issues that if you do not strip corruption of its class nature, and precisely because of even the way it is even the way it is talked about and the way it is framed, corruption, embezzlement, and things like that. When in actual fact, all these things are basically just stealing. People steal our money, and then we use all manner of euphemisms to describe how they have done or to describe what they've done. And these things do not trigger the minds of the people to understand exactly what the people have done and to give their support and moral outrage that is needed to push the people away from doing these kinds of things. So these are systemic issues that have to be tackled for any sort of anti-corruption fight to succeed. Again, if you look at the setup of the office, which at some point also derives some of its powers and authority from the office of the Attorney General, or some of its supervisory powers from the office of the Attorney General. That also needs to be looked at, because the office of the Special Prosecutor ought to be very independent. The office of the Attorney General is a partisan political appointment. So if anybody is working under the Attorney General, the person is not going to have all the independence that he or she needs in order to do the kinds of work that the Special Prosecutor Office is supposed to do, i.e. by prosecuting people who are politically exposed, who go around, stealing our money, even if they are in government. So these are certain issues that we need to look at. And I think that one of the legacies that he can leave as Special Prosecutor is to make sure that some of these systemic issues, even going back to the very mandate of the office, are looked at, are brought back to the table and looked at, so that we can have an office that is capable of doing the prosecutorial work very independently and very effectively and efficiently from what the Attorney General's office has been doing over the years.
Just perhaps maybe finally, Mr. Senano, on this issue. If you look at Mr. Martin Amidu and the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dame's relationship, and I guess following on the Woyome issue and, their court appearances, I guess we don't need a storyteller to tell us that the relationship was a bit antagonistic. Here's a new man coming in who seemed to have quite a good relationship with the Attorney General. By the way, some of the Attorney General's powers is what's been lended to this new office. He talks about the fact that they were mates and he's just a year older than him. The fact that they seem to be good together, would that also promote the corruption fights?
Well, yes. I mean, collaboration is always very important in the anti-corruption space. And the general challenges that Mr. Amidu faced in getting collaboration from other agencies when he needed information and otherwise is what also culminated in the lack of traction that we evidenced. And so hopefully it should contribute to better results. However, at the same time, one doesn't want an overlap where that then translates into rubbing shoulders where there are issues that should be taken up. So I think there are advantages, there are also disadvantages. The substantive issue probably is the need to make sure that the Article 88 aspect that brings the SPO under the Attorney General is dealt with. And I think Hadi mentions that. I'm glad he himself raised it at the vetting. what we need to do is that many more stakeholders looking at the need for a constitutional review. This is one of the major plaques that ought to be taken up. And so, yes, there is some advantage, but ideally we should also try and isolate that office completely from being under the Attorney General's department.
As it is now, can we?
No, so we need a constitutional, in fact, in general, a lot of the difficulty we are experiencing can be directly related to the kind of constitution we have at the moment. There is excessive executive influence on other branches of government, and it doesn't allow for independent entities to, stand and hold the checks and balances. So we really, really, like Kenya and other jurisdictions have done, need a revamp or a totally new constitution if we're going to do much more and much better than we have done so far in our democratic experience.
Mr. Hadi, what's your take on the good relationship? There seemed to be some good vibe going on with this new SP and the Attorney General. That should put us in a good place by way of progress.
Well, that's one way to look at it, but there's also the other way, as Mr. Adam has said, because if somebody who is, it's the kind of architecture that we have, the Attorney General typically, because of the political architecture, is unable to prosecute corruption cases that have to do with their own people. The people of the party in government. So clearly, those are things that the special prosecutor, who is not necessarily, or who is supposed not necessarily to be a party person, can handle. But, with a very, with a kind of relationship, cozy relationship, it could facilitate, information sharing and all of that. But it could also be a recipe for deal making and, all manner of shenanigans in terms of sitting on cases and not working on them. So I think the public would have to keep an eye on both offices and make sure that the difficulty that we have, and I'm glad that Mr. Adam has hinted at it, is a constitution, it's a 1992 constitution. The last time I called it a Sakawa constitution, and he didn't take kindly to that. But that's exactly what it is. Because if you look at it, the sort of architecture it creates does not give power even to the public to do anything after the appointment. And it's basically just about we talk and then we go back and sleep. After a few days, everything goes back to normal. And public officers can do whatever they like within their tenure. So the only thing that we can do is to keep an eye and keep the pressure. But more importantly, we don't have to sleep on the systemic fundamental changes that we need. And what are those systemic and fundamental changes? We need to clip some of the powers of the executive. We need to make sure that other branches of government have power. We need to make sure that the people themselves have power. And in order to reach this stage, we need a totally new constitution that will facilitate the power of the people to hold their elected officials responsible. This 1992 Sagawa Constitution cannot lead us anywhere.
I wanted you to simply call it as it is. It is the 1992 Constitution.
I know.
Well, Mr. Senanu and Yakubu Hadi, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I guess after the confirmation, we'll carry this forward. Thank you, Mr. Senanu.
Thank you. Thank you, too.
All right, and that's our conversation on the back of the vetting of Mr. Kissi Agyebeng. He's gotten unanimous approval from the committee that he appeared before yesterday. The entire Parliament House would also take a decision, a final one. We'll see how that goes, and we'll certainly update you.